I'm R.A. Schwartz, and welcome to the Winsidr Show, where it's all about the W. We are back with WNBA Stocks with myself and Owen Pence, where we take a look at where the market is in the W. If you like our show, please consider joining our Patreon community, patreon.com/Winsidr. For less than a cup of coffee a month, you can directly show support for the hard work we do covering the W. And don't forget to see our amazing staff's written content over at winsidr.com. That's winsidr.com. You're looking to get tickets for the upcoming WNBA season? Thanks to our sponsor, TickPick, you don't have to worry. The original no-fee ticketing site and official ticketing partner of the defending WNBA champion Chicago Sky. Use the link tickpick.com/Winsidr. That's tickpick.com/Winsidr for all your upcoming ticket purchases for the NFL, WNBA, NBA, or any other event. Owen, welcome back. It's great to have you. I've been really enjoying our check-ins on the WNBA market. WNBA stock has become a fun little cornerstone of the Winsidr Show. How you doing?
I'm doing tremendously. It's awesome. I couldn't agree more. Absolutely loving it. And now it's fun because we're kind of into the rhythm of the season and we're starting to get some of these full rosters back. So to really engage with who's on the up and up and who's on the down, it's a little more kind of firm in our analysis now, knowing that, we're not basing takes off of one or two games. So still early, still very early, but it's sunny here in Brooklyn. It's beautiful outside. I'm ready to get into it.
Yeah, it's not beautiful and sunny here in DC. I was gonna go for a run today, but it's gonna be pouring rain as it has been for the last couple days.
You hate to-
Um, let's hop right into it. Now, typically we start with the teams that are on the up and up. We like to keep it positive for the start, and I make you go first. But you know what? It's our third time doing it, so let's flip it on its head. I believe the last time we did a stock WNBA stocks, it was a week ago, last Monday, so it was like the 15th or something. So we're back, and we're going to start off with the down teams. And I know you have a team for this, but I'm going to go first. The LA Sparks, a team that has gotten a lot of attention in each one of these episodes that we've done so far. They started off hot, beating the defending champion Chicago Sky in overtime, and then they beat the Fever. But since then, it has just been a downward spiral with a 4-game losing streak starting in Atlanta and continuing through Connecticut and Minnesota, and then the Seattle Storm. The interesting aspect of that, obviously, is that a lot of those were away games. I think Nneka Ogwumike coined the phrase they were on like what was it, the home opener tour, because on their road trip, which happens every time, early in the season you go on a road trip like that, you're probably going to be the home opening opponent. And as we all know, it's hard to beat a team at home. It's even harder to beat them in their home opener. But to kind of cement the whole fact that they're on the downtrend, that they've really struggled, I think has to be that in their home opener um, against the Minnesota Lynx, they couldn't pull it off. And they had that advantage. They had the stars in the crowd, and they still haven't. They have not found a flow, a proper role for Kennedy Carter in my mind. They finally have Katie Lou back, but kind of questions on how long it's going to take her to get, blended into the system. Liz Cambage, who has been putting up some really good numbers, has not been as dominant, and they've struggled to find a way to really, mesh her into the system. Early on when we talked, they were doing a lot of, swapping her and Nneka, just staggering them a little bit so it wasn't too crowded or anything like that. But they've really struggled. Me personally, I like the idea of surrounding, Nneka and Liz with just a lot of shooters. But that's not what we've seen. I think my biggest critique, honestly, of Derek Fisher is that he hasn't really tried different lineups. I haven't really seen him experiment too much. Yeah, thoughts on LA?
Well, I'm going to start with something you kind of touched upon briefly, which is the Sparks home opener, and it is good to mention all the context here, which is that they played the majority of the beginning of their schedule on the road, which is difficult for anyone. But we got to talk about the Lynx game. We got to talk about the end of it because, there was a lot of discussion about this on social media in the moment, and then it kind of faded. But I mean, I've tried to be fair to Derek Fisher over the years. I think I have been. I really like some of the stuff that he does occasionally. Um, it's getting to a point where you've got to question the fact that Derek Fisher is responsible for the front office and the coaching decisions that this team makes. And if we're gonna look at the coaching, the end of the Lynx game was completely inexcusable. For those who didn't catch it, Kayla McBride in her first game back played tremendously for Minnesota. Gets an and one, puts Minnesota up 3 with 2 seconds left. Sparks call a timeout and advance the ball. Again, you need 3 points to force overtime. Derek Fisher draws up a lob for Liz Cambage, which goes completely awry. The ball clanks off the rim, and time expires as Jordan Canada tries to get a desperation heave up, and Los Angeles loses. Now, this is just one little instance, but I think to me the thing that was more worrisome was less the fact that it was a clearly botched, inexplicable play call, and more the fact that Fisher didn't own up to it after the game. Lexi Brown in her post-game presser, which us who were virtual didn't get to see due to technical difficulties, apparently kind of had a little eye roll when asked about the final play call. Said, "I don't
Well,
really."
real quick, I just want to say Lexi doesn't do little eye rolls. It was a big eye roll.
Yeah, fair. That's a good
I
correction.
haven't seen it because, like you said, but yeah, I'm just gonna assume. Go.
No, 100%. So Lexi said that. Then we get NECA, and she, gives a great answer. She always does, but essentially says that the play call was for a 3 and a 2, which is a major head scratcher. So, okay, so we asked coach what the play call was, and he tells us that, there were essentially 2 options. One would be that Cambage gets fouled. She makes the first free throw, intentionally misses the second, you get a putback. Now that to me is BS, because why in the world would the Lynx foul you when they're up 3? It makes absolutely no sense for them to send Liz Cambage to the line right there. Then he says the second option was that there was supposed to be a pin down screen for Lexi. Lexi comes off the pin down, catches the ball, hits the 3. You go back and look at the film. Lexi Brown is nowhere near coming off a pin down, and there's no screen set for her. The only person who could have been available to set the screen was Katie Lou, who's inbounding the ball. She's not even making any indications that she's about to go set a screen. So if that is the situation in which you lose your home opener to a team that's at the bottom of the standings right now, that's a major issue. The fact that the coach can't come out and say, yeah, you know what, I messed up. Because if you own up to it, okay, great. We all make mistakes. But the fact that there was confusion amongst the players, Fisher denies that there was confusion, and then essentially tells us that the play was for a Lexi, pin down 3-pointer when the film says otherwise. That to me is a source of major concern when Fisher is not only the coach of this team, but he's in charge of the basketball operations side as well. The one positive I want to mention here, just so I don't completely bash the team, because it's looking bad, and I think the stuff you said about Hollywood is also a big issue. She needs to be a bigger part of this team. I just don't see a way in which this team scores the ball consistently enough to justify Kennedy Carter, essentially being a backup who gets 10 minutes or so a game. Just doesn't make sense. But the one clear positive is Lexi Brown, who, played at Athletes Unlimited this offseason, really gained some confidence, got a ring, but really didn't get any minutes with the Sky last year. And she's just been killing it. Always been a tenacious perimeter defender. Her shot just looks absolutely awesome right now. And that's the type of player they need. They need shooting in a desperate way. But if you're not going to take advantage of the shooter who's hot, who's on your team when it matters in the clutch, I have a lot of questions.
Well, also, I mean, I don't want to harp on the Sparks for too long because that's not what the show's about. But it's an interesting thing because, like, first of all, like you said, like Lexi had already made a couple big shots in that game. We know Lexi has a history with Minnesota. She wants to be the one to send Minnesota on the road packing with an L. So I completely agree with everything you said about the play calls and everything like that. There's so many questions. I mean, yeah, there's a lot to unpack there. I think the interesting aspect is, as good as Lexi has played, like when Lexi signed on to this team, I don't think, just with the thought process of Christy Tolliver coming back, I'm going to go on a limb and assume that the LA Sparks were not thinking of having Lexi all year. The way Lexi has played, she has forced the hand where the Sparks can't cut her. They can't waive her, and they're going to have to waive one of these draft picks, or suspend, or they're going to have to make some movement when Christy Tolliver eventually does come back. I have no idea when she's coming back because I don't pay attention to the NBA. Tell me, what team are you picking for down?
So I think that the other down stock this week is the most obvious one, and probably the team that's been talked about the most, over the last week or so, and that's the Phoenix Mercury. And I'm going to start this off, as we have every week so far on this show, which is to say, free Brittany Griner. It's the most important thing in the WNBA right now that we talk about. We need to bring Brittany home as soon as possible, and just as always, praying for her well-being and mental health. So the situation in Phoenix is already in a weird spot, because how can you judge a team who's missing its best player due to an absolute nightmare, horrific situation? It's difficult, but we have to talk about the team that is on the floor right now. And obviously, unless you've completely not been paying attention, there's some real chemistry issues on this team. Skylar Diggins-Smith and Diana Taurasi got into it on the sidelines. We don't really know what about, but both of them were clearly incensed in the moment. And since then, Skylar has been away from the team. The team is listing it as a non-COVID illness. And in the games that she has missed, the Mercury have been essentially destroyed, save for, a good half here and there. Now, again, no Griner, best player, not something they could have accounted for. No one's fault within the organization. That's just what happened. But this team is looking like a shell of itself in other ways. And I think the main one being that there seems to be this tension between the other two members of the big three who are active and available. And the statistics reflect this. I think that one thing again to mention is that they've had a brutal schedule to start the season. They've got the Aces 3 times already, and they've lost all 3 games, and none of them have been particularly close. They kept it close in the first half on Saturday. The second game was probably the closest of the 3. The first was a complete blowout. So a rough early season schedule. And then given the
Not. I mean, I will say, as rough as this early season schedule has been, they did get a. I'm weary to call this a blessing, because it's definitely not. It's a very serious thing, but they did get handed 2 easy games against the Seattle Storm with Brandon Stewart and Epiphany Prince not playing due to COVID or safety, whatever, health and safety protocol. Like, think about that, right? If Stewie and Epiphany Prince play in those 2 games, we might be talking about a team without a win yet.
Totally. So it's not looking good. They're 9th in net rating right now. There's kind of a gap between the Sparks in 8th place, and then a big drop off to Phoenix at 9. Indiana, Minnesota, and New York are the bottom 3, and those teams have really just clearly been bad so far. So Phoenix is in a group that it does not want to be in. I think if you're going to mention the positives on the floor, you'd say that Diamond DeShields is continuing to look better, which is wonderful to see. And Taurasi still has flashes offensively where she's just dominant. She's great. She changes the whole geometry of the floor with the gravity that she kind of possesses with her shooting abilities. But as has been the case late in her career, she's also often, if not always, the worst defender on the floor. And so the margin for error with this team is very thin. It just does not seem to be clicking. I don't really want to speculate on what went down between Skylar and Diana, And it's a real sticky situation because Taurasi is obviously the number one player in franchise history. So you have this loyalty towards her. But if we're looking in the here and now, I mean, you kind of have to say that Skylar might be, if not just definitively, is more important to their future as a franchise on the floor. And if she's really unhappy and displeased with something, within the organization and going on in the locker room, you need to be proactive in addressing that. You can't just let her kind of sit out as Diana continues to play these games and you lose by 20 and 30 points. Not a good look. And just a tough situation that this team is finding itself in early in the season.
Yeah, and there's so much, again, we're not going to speculate here. One of the things that I just want to throw out there, and some might argue, hey, this is speculation, is like everyone assumes that the altercation, right, or whatever you want to call it, on the sidelines was Skylar and Diana fighting with each other. If you watch the video, Skylar looks upset on the bench, shaking her leg. She stands up. Turner tries to calm her down. That does not work. Then Taurasi tries to calm her down. That does not work. And then they start screaming at each other. For all we know, there was something else or somebody else that she was upset about. And that's where I think we've all just assumed, and probably maybe it is right, that it's between her and Taurasi. I don't know that. And I feel like we're kind of almost, pigeonholing ourselves by assuming that that's what the issue is. I completely agree with you. Let's be honest. Djanet Rossi arguably isn't even the third best player on this team. Like, let's be real about that. Granted, in my mind, I still consider Brittany Griner on this team. Like, I can't think of the Phoenix Mercury without Brittany Griner. Free Brittany, like you said. Yeah, I before we move on to the up teams, because I think you kind of hit everything for the Mercury there. The one thing that I'm going to give myself a pat on the back with LA. I said it's either going to be glorious or it's going to be a train wreck. With the Mercury, I said, look, you don't have Brittany Griner, MVP. You got some big names. You are not going to be able to sustain a positive growth season. And yeah, I just don't know for the Mercury, at least. I understand, yes, they had a really hard schedule early on. They're still going to have to, play Chicago coming up. They're going to have to play, heck, they're going to play the Sparks soon. We're going to see them play Connecticut also. Like there's some tough games coming up. I don't see it necessarily getting too much easier for this team. And I really hope we see Skylar back on the court. Let's talk about teams that are going up. I'll go first. I'm going with the Connecticut Sun. I mean, the way Alyssa Thomas has been playing of recently has been amazing. Bree Jones has been balling out. John Claude Jones is finally getting into form. I spoke about this a lot. I don't think there was enough attention given to the fact that, a lot of these superstar top tier players like John Claude Jones are so used to playing right up until the WNBA season that when her team was no longer going to be involved in the EuroLeague Final Four tournament, whatever you want to call it, and she came back stateside, she's just sitting around. I mean, obviously, yeah, players don't just get completely out of shape. I'm sure she was working out, but it's not the same as playing against top tier athletes. And so I thought that there was going to be a curve that's going to take her to get back into the season, get ready, and kind of flow like that. And yeah, a little bit of a slow start, losing game number one to the Sun by 2. It was intense. Sorry, Sun lost to Liberty
They,
by 2. It was intense. I was like, wait a second, what? They
they
played
kind of
themselves. They
lost to
lost.
the Sun. I mean, they beat themselves. Let's be
Yeah, yeah, yeah. That's what I meant. Yeah.
honest.
But the way that this team has kind of shifted around now, granted, you can turn back, you can say, hey, they played the Liberty once, they played the Sparks once, and they played the Fever twice. So not the hardest schedule to start the season. I agree with you based on what we've been talking about, what we've learned about these teams. But I'm excited to see this team. And as they always say, all the coaches say this, all the players say this, you don't want to peak too early. I see this team each game getting better and better. And I see Kurt Miller, because they're playing these games and they're getting nice size leads, testing the waters of his bench. And as we know, Kurt Miller is notorious for not going deep in his bench. Any thoughts on Connecticut before you tell us who your up team is?
Yeah, totally. I think you nailed it in basically all aspects of your analysis. The main thing I was going to mention to temper the excitement is what you said, which is they've played 5 games, 2 against New York, 2 against Indiana, and 1 against Los Angeles. Extremely weak schedule. They have not yet been tested. I want to see this team against the top 4 or 5 teams in the league, which we will get to see soon, and I'm quite excited for that. Um, as far as what we have to go off of, yeah, they've looked incredible. AT is playing at an MVP level. The net rating, obviously, again inflated by the weakness of their schedule, but their net rating is by far the best in the league through the first 5 games. And I think that the thing you said at the end is kind of what's most exciting for me. If you think about like the bubble season, Connecticut is kind of the opposite arc for them. They got off to a really rough start and then were kind of forced to scramble the whole year, and then really got back into the thick of things and ended up having a great season. But if you looked at the minute totals for Djanet Bonner and Alyssa Thomas and some of their primary players that season, they were playing 35 out of every 40 minutes. Not exactly a sustainable model when a lot of these players, have to play 2 seasons. But if you look at the minute totals right now, Jasmine Thomas, the only one over 30 minutes a game. Everyone else's minutes have been extremely manageable. And so I think that, what we've seen from this bench has been really, really exciting. I think Djanet Carrington, we just talked about Lexi Brown, being someone who played at Athletes Unlimited and just gained a whole lot of confidence that we're really seeing this season in her offensive repertoire. Djanet Carrington's another one who's just making the most of her minutes right now and is exactly the type of player that this Connecticut team desperately needs, which is kind of someone who can come in on this backcourt and really just give a little bit of offensive punch when they're lacking it. So I think that's huge. I want to amend what I said earlier. Alyssa Thomas is the only one over 30 minutes a game so far. Apologies for the mistake, not Jasmine. But regardless, the point being that, this early, easy schedule so far has afforded Kurt Miller the luxury to see what he has in Nia Clouden and to give Natisha Heidemann, big minutes, and to give Djanet, 24 minutes a game. I don't think anyone anticipated that. So I'd be very enthused, with the caveat that, they haven't played anyone yet. And really the ultimate question is, can this team maximize both Alyssa Thomas and Jonquel Jones at the same time against the best teams? They did a good job of that in 2019, but it's 2022 now, and we'll have to wait and see.
Yeah, the only thing I want to add to that is just so our listeners can get an idea of it. Kurt Miller is so used to playing like a 5-6 person rotation, right? And you think I'm exaggerating. I'm really not. But now he has the ability with this roster and with Dwana Bonner back and having Courtney Williams, you have Carrington, you have Heidemann. I know Clouden still has some work to do. You have Holmes and you got Bree Jones. Like, they have legitimately 4 players that you could make an argument on a different WNBA team would be starting. So yeah, who's your up team?
Totally. So this is the final team we're talking about this week on Stocks Up and Stocks Down. And if you're a fan of this team, you might be mad at us at this point because it's week 3. We have yet to discuss this team. And this team, I'd say without a doubt, it's pretty hard to make a case against what I'm about to say. This team, the Las Vegas Aces, have been the story of the season so far. I mean, just an incredibly fun bunch to watch. And I think a very rewarding start to the season for all of us who have watched the Aces for the last handful of years under Bill Laimbeer, who I must point out is a legend, is a 3-time WNBA champion, is a multiple-time NBA champion. The guy has it all, and clearly kind of beloved by his players. It was wonderful seeing them all swarm him on the sidelines after they won last week. So no shade towards Bill Laimbeer. I'm done with that. But, I think we all knew it. I think most of us knew it. He just was not the right coach for the modern game. and was really stifling the potential of most of the players on this roster for the last few seasons. And to see a team who just feels empowered right now, and that's the word that I would, assign to this early season scorching start for Las Vegas, is just the empowerment that these players are playing with. Obviously, I'll start with one of my all-time faves, who I feel very validated in how she's playing right now, Jackie Young. I've been defending her for years, as people have been calling her overrated. I mean, no one's had a better start to the season. Jackie's guarding the other team's best perimeter offensive player. She's arguably been the Aces' best offensive player as well. A'ja Wilson just dominating folks on defense, doing what she does on offense. Kelsey Plum is having a career year. The system that Becky Hammon has come in and installed in Las Vegas essentially gives the power to the players. There was a great clip that you'll see on WNBA League Pass during commercials, where I don't know if this was in training camp or one of the early practices, but it doesn't really matter. Regardless, she's saying, hey, if we're running a play and you're open, don't keep running the play, shoot the ball. And you're seeing that these players are just playing with such flow and such ease and such confidence, and they're running teams off the floor. A few stats for you here, if you will. The Aces have a 110.3 offensive rating, which means, for those unfamiliar with the stat, that they're scoring 110 plus points per 100 possessions, which is best in the league and is in striking distance of the 2019 Mystics, who had the best offensive rating of all time. So something to follow, going through this season, is the race for the best offensive rating ever for the nerds out there, such as myself. The Aces are first in defensive rebounding percentage. So they're grabbing all the misses, which I think is very notable, given that, people always talked about, hey, can this team win with A'ja Wilson at the 5 and Dearica Hamby at the 4? They always played so big under Lambeer and killed teams on the glass, and people wondered, well, will they have to sacrifice rebounding if they downsize? They haven't. They have not sacrificed rebounding at all. They're the best defensive rebounding team in the league. They are first in pace, playing at the fastest pace in the league. And they're first in turnover percentage, which might be most impressive of anything for a team that's playing so freely and quickly, to also be turning the ball over less than any other team in the W. Just means that these players aren't only being aggressive and looking for their offense, but they're also protecting the ball and protecting each possession and getting shots up, which is huge. You look at the opposite end of the spectrum. We talked about New York last week on the down stocks. That's a team that's turning the ball over. It feels like every other possession, they're not even getting shots. With Las Vegas, it's just every time down the floor, they're getting a good look. They're passing into better looks, and they're taking the open shots. I mean, I'll go back to Jackie Young. She's hitting 3-pointers. She's getting to the free throw line. They're doing all the things that efficient basketball teams do, and you've just got to be absolutely thrilled if you're an Aces fan or anyone within the organization, because the vibes are so good, the product is so watchable, and they're winning games.
They're having fun. It looks like they're having fun. The stats, the numbers, the record, they're clearly having fun. It's honest. They are so, we going into the season, there's a lot of talk about, the LA Sparks being Showtime Sparks, and being that fast paced, high octane offense and in your face, impressive defense. That has been the Las Vegas Aces. I want to echo what you said about Jackie Young. I mean, she's putting her name in the early conversation for Defensive Player of the Year, the way she's playing. I want to, just talk about the fact that we really haven't seen Raquana. Like, this team has more elements to it, that I just think, yes, is there a depth issue? Yes. Are there still question marks? Yes. They're not, you don't start off 6-1 and win a championship the next day. That's not how it works. There's much more to go. They're number one in the W right now. I agree with you. It is a story. And heck, I'll say it early on. You know how, like, when after a team wins a championship, like, heck, even the Chicago Sky, there's a point where you just kind of like feel it. Like, to quote a great movie that I grew up watching with my family, The Blues Brothers, I'm on a mission from God. Like it almost feels like at a certain point when that championship team hits a certain point in the season, it just feels like they're on a mission and nothing can stop them. I don't know if I'm ready to say that's the Aces now because it's 6-1 early on in the season, but it has. I'm getting a whiff of that. You know what I mean? Like I can smell that. Um, they're a scary team. And I really don't know what else there is to say about that. I mean, they're just a scary, scary team. Let's move on to our closeout segment of the show. It's called Stock Watch. I'll go first, and I'll keep it brief. The team on my Stock Watch, Chicago Sky. You know, they finally got Clea Copper back. This roster is now set. We've seen so much growth through them throughout the early season. I'm excited to see what happens now that we have three Finals MVPs on one roster, along with the best point guard, arguably in league history. This is a video game roster. This isn't expected to happen in real life, but it just did, and I am so excited to watch them throughout this season. Who's your stock watch?
I'm so excited too. Let me just say that Candace Parker in Kaw's first game back with the triple double. I mean, they've got Azare Stevens coming off the bench. It's going to be incredibly fun to watch them all season. Stock watch over here, we have the Dallas Wings, a team that I had in the first. In the pilot episode of this podcast, I had the Wings as the stock down team, which was unfair. They'd played one game, but that was all we had. So I had to come up with something. But Dallas looks great. They're fifth in net rating right now. The top four teams: Connecticut, Vegas, Chicago, and Washington. I think everyone kind of assumes as among the league's elite. So for Dallas to be fifth right there behind that group is extremely promising. Marina Mabrey is just continuing to improve. Can we talk for a quick second about the Notre Dame players thriving in the league right now? You got Jess Shepard killing it in Minnesota. You've got Jackie with the career year, and then not just Marina, but Enrique, seems to be taking another step, I think, which is arguably the most important thing right now for the Wings, is that she's seeming to get a little more consistent and just finding her offense within the flow of the game way better versus kind of forcing it. She still has the bad shots. She can get better on defense, better as a playmaker. There's a lot to improve upon, but this team just has so many pieces, so many good rotation players. Izzy Harrison, maybe one of the most underrated bigs in the league. They're just playing really well, and the reason they're on my stock watch is because they've got two with Connecticut this week. So let's see what you got against one of the top teams in the league. And it'll also be fun to see Connecticut get tested a little more. So that's why the Wings are my stock watch team.
Sweet. I love it. I agree with everything you're saying. I'm interested to see the Wings because this is the fun team that we've all wanted to see, right? Like every year as their core gets older and older, we kind of just wait and wait. Like when are we finally going to see it? And I agree with you. These next two games against Connecticut, a little across the country series. I don't know. But I would I be shocked if Dallas lost both? No. Would I be shocked if Dallas pulled away one? No. Dallas winning both, that would be a little bit of a shocker. This has been WNBA Stocks on the Winsidr Show. Let me remind you, if you're looking to get tickets for the upcoming WNBA season, thanks to our sponsor TickPick, you don't have to worry. Use the link tickpick.com/Winsidr for all your ticket purchases for any event.